Hi, this is Joy Robertson. As many of you know, I love food. I love finding new restaurants. I love trying new dishes. And most of all, I love talking to the many great restaurateurs and entrepreneurs we have here in the Ozarks and beyond. I love hearing their stories, and that's what this podcast is all about, learning more about them and their journey. So join me as we savor the Ozarks. This episode is brought to you by Arctic Food Equipment. Hey everybody, welcome to Savor the Ozarks. I am on Walnut Street in one of the most delightful Italian restaurants in town. I am at Gilardi's with owner, chef, and you're the head dishwasher, yeah. James Martin. That's how you bill yourself. James, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for taking time. We really appreciate it as well. So, for sure.
Well, I appreciate what you've done here for so many years. How many years has it been here at Gilardi's?
Let's see, we bought it February 13th, 2013, so 12 years now. So we've been through a lot down here, and you know, not including COVID, but we've been through a lot. So, but 12 years is quite a record, and the restaurant is actually celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. So.
Okay, so this restaurant was owned and operated by Nicola Gilardi for many years. He started it, and then you ended up taking over. First of all, though, are you from around here?
I'm not. You know, with Nicola, actually, I helped about a month after Nicola opened. I came here to this restaurant and worked for him for 2.5 years. But I'm not from here. I'm from Kansas City originally, Lee Summit more specifically. But I had a debate scholarship to a school down in Oklahoma, and I was down there for 2.5 years. And then I came up here to finish out my college and everything else, and just fell in love with Springfield. I love the Ozarks. Just a great place.
It is a great place.
Yeah.
I love it too. So when you came here, you're on this. You had this debate scholarship, which is really interesting. At that time, when you went to college, were you thinking about getting into hospitality, culinary, anything like that?
No, actually, while I was in college, I wanted to be a hostage negotiator for, like Waco had just happened while I was in high school, and so I wanted to get involved with that. So I actually graduated with a degree in Eastern religion and Buddhist studies. And so my thought was, you know, either I go into that type of negotiation or I just continue to stay in school and teach and that kind of thing. But by the time I finally graduated, because I changed my major 5 times, I said, you know what, I'm done with school and I'm just going to move on. And so about by the time I got to be in my mid-20s, I started thinking, okay, what am I going to do with my life? You know, you get that mid-20 point, you know, it's kind of like an early midlife crisis of I'm no longer a kid, I'm not in school, now what the heck am I going to do? And
it's scary.
It's scary. It's as scary as being 18 graduating from high school. But you're old enough to realize that it is scary. When you're 18, you don't know that stuff. So I kind of looked around and did a lot of introspection and said, okay, what do you know? And the only thing I really knew, because I wanted to go into business, was restaurants. I'd been in restaurants since I was 15. You know, at that point, I had already worked at Gallery Bistro. I worked here for a couple years. I was at Bijan's at that time, and so I said, you know what, I'm gonna open my own restaurant. And so I started writing business plans about 25, 26 years old, and it took me 10 years of writing business plans to get the actual SBA loan. So
I remember you telling me once. I promise I didn't dream this. I think you said you learned to cook from YouTube.
I did.
Okay.
I did.
I did not make that up. I knew I remembered that.
No. So, you know, in my infinite wisdom, I thought I knew everything about restaurants, and that was so far from the truth. I knew really nothing about restaurants. I've been in the business for 20 years by the time I bought this place, and I thought I knew everything, and I didn't know anything at all. So what I did is I hired all my best friends, you know, and I had lots of them at that point. And after 12 months, you know, it was either my way or the highway. And the staff told me, well, you're going to walk down the highway. And I said, well, but this is my business. It's either my way or your highway, not my highway. So after that, you know, they all left, and I was left with, you know, a dishwasher and no cook, no recipes, no systems, no nothing. And so I shut down for 3 days, and I tightened up the menu, and I said, I'm going to teach myself how to do this, because I grew up very poor. And so, food stamp poor, American poor, not like don't have running water poor, but we're poor. We are freaking poor. And so I said, this is the best thing I've got, and I'm already leveraged as far as I can leverage. My house is on the line. If I don't make this work, I'm going to be homeless. And so I would get here about 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning. I would prep and figure out how to make marinara, how salt and fat and sugar and everything works together. And then we would cook through service, and then I would go home and I would watch Italian YouTube channels. And so I knew a little bit of Spanish, and obviously you can tell, oh, that's garlic, oh, that's onion, oh, that's how that sauce works or looks or whatever, or how viscous it is on a soup spoon. So through that process, I taught myself how to cook. During that time, I was really, aggressive in my proving to myself that I could cook. And so I won, the organic chef conference. I was winning chef competitions and things like that. And through that process, we rebuilt the kitchen, and then and that took 3 or 4 months. And then I had to come out in the front of the house and then fire everybody in the front of the house and rebuild that. Because, again, all my best friends were voiding off cash checks and comping cash checks and stealing money out of the drawer and, all the things that happen in a restaurant business. And so,
your friends were doing that?
Yeah,
they weren't friends.
No. As we get older, our definition of friends gets much, much tighter.
Much more refined.
Yes. You count them on one hand when you get into your 40s. And so, through that process, we kind of just rebuilt the entire business again. And we were, just ran... we're running good. Before COVID, I was really only working about 35, 40 hours a week, which is, for a person in their 40s, they should be working 50, really.
Well, and in the restaurant business, especially if you own it, I think people are there darn near all the time.
We are. We really are. So, before COVID, all that, and then, COVID happened, and, I was cooking and had a 5-table section out here on the floor and wearing a mask and everything else, and we had to rebuild after that again. And so we're in that process still. And over the last 2 years, now we're getting buffeted by things like, that everyday people know. If you go and actually buy groceries, someone really loves the word groceries. I keep hearing the word groceries on the news, and it's spoken by somebody who's never bought groceries, has never gone and bought an apple, and yet he's wanting to tell us how we're going to solve all these food costs. It's not going to happen that way. The only way, we're going to be able to survive going forward into 2026 is food prices have to come down. Inflation has to come down. People have to understand that if you are going to go and get some food that's made by somebody else, that's prepped by somebody else, that's cooked by somebody else, that's cleaned up after you, that we're all going to pay for it. And I think we notice that too. We look at, go to Taco Bell. Their tacos are smaller, and they're more expensive. And we keep looking at all this stuff and we want to point fingers, and really, there's only one finger to point it at. So, but, we're going to survive because we're small. We're not a huge restaurant. I don't know if anybody knows James Clary.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
Chef Clary,
James?
sure.
Remember that out in Sunshine? He had that great little restaurant.
Souffle. Oh, my goodness, yes.
Oh, that chocolate souffle was so good. Well, and in some ways he thought he could make twice as much money by opening a place twice as big. And in reality, you lose your money twice as fast. When the economy downturns or you don't fulfill people's expectations, given the price they're paying at the restaurant, well, then you're going to have problems. So, but it's been a wonderful journey. I'm 48 now, and I bought this place when I was 36. And some things have changed, but some things will never change, whether or not I'm cooking the dishes or not. And the fact of the matter is that we will not deviate from the highest quality food prepared in the best quality manner, in the safest manner, because working in the kitchen, you can directly affect someone's health. If you store chicken above salad, and we see that in food inspections all the time, and service by the best quality staff I can afford. And that's a thing that I will not deviate from. And that's, it is what it is, and it's a yet another challenge as a business owner, but we're going to make it, and it's always going to be the best you can get, and that's our goal at all times. So,
Well, I know it's a lot for any business owner, but in the restaurant industry, I know it's a scary time. You don't sound terribly encouraged. You don't sound terribly discouraged either, but it's a scary time in our economy right now.
it very much is. We're seeing, we obviously cater to folks who maybe have disposable income that can go on vacation. Maybe they have a lake house. Maybe they have a boat on Table Rock. But we also cater to the once a year. This is our anniversary. This is our birthday. And even to the extent where we have, we're a safe place for people to come to. I can't even count how many LGBTQ couples have gotten engaged here because it's a safe space, And so
And that's very much appreciated.
And especially in times like these, I think it's even more important. And, but that's why I fell in love with the restaurant business. I was supposed to be a hostage negotiator or a constitutional attorney. I love constitutional law, which is another reason why I actually understand what's going on right now with our Constitution. But the reason why I love the restaurant business is because we affect people's lives.
It's all about relationships.
It is. It is. Without relationships, with your staff, with your community, with your patrons, you wake up and you go to bed empty. And when we service somebody truly out of the goodness of our heart, just because we like being of service to people, that's how we go to sleep feeling fulfilled. And that's how we wake up ready for the next day. And so all of those factors are present in the restaurant business. But right now, we are just getting rocked. With insurance having doubled. Workman's comp, fire and casualty, everything else, because we do own the property here, is all doubling. And credit card fees have doubled. And, so when we start looking at, a razor-thin profit margin of maybe 4 or 5%, 4 or 5 cents on the dollar goes to the restaurant to hopefully save up enough money because that oven is about to die, or that freezer is about to die, or anything else that pops up, and then we have costs that are so fluctuating right now. Whether they're going, they soar astronomically, and so we have to change our recipes for our pasta. Instead of doing bucatini, which is an egg noodle pasta, we have to go with fettuccine, which is a flour-based pasta, because eggs, right? And at some point, you price yourself out of the market, and that's really where we're at, is trying to find that balance. And I think we're getting there. We're going to get there.
Well, I hope all you folks out in the audience are paying close attention to this, because that's the reality of it. Tip your server and be nice. Be nice to the people when you go into a restaurant. But keep that in mind. It is a difficult proposition. I look around this room and I see all these tables, and I've been in here when there's conversation and people are laughing and taking pictures, and there are bottles of wine, and the food is magnificent. But I think sometimes a lot of us forget, you're in here early and you are here late, and I'm sure you've got a great staff. Tell me about your staff. I know that means the world to you, and it means the world to me as a diner when I have killer service. It just makes the whole experience better.
I think, and again, we already knew that staff is the lifeblood, as much as your systems or whatever you've got going on in your restaurant. But when COVID happened, we really were taught another lesson of how important that staff is. And because immediately everybody's gone. And so it was just my wife, myself, our son, and another server. And that was how we survived 2020. And in the process of rebuilding, we've been really focused on very high quality staff, either front or back of the house, to ensure that the food is being prepared in a safe manner according to food health inspection, requirements, being cooked by people who are very cognizant of cross-contamination and making sure that we're not using these tongs that we use for shrimp, that we're not using them on vegetables, and so on and so forth. So, for us, we actually, here recently, we've undergone a transformation We are promoting from within several people up to management, and we're bringing in new people. And the goal for that is that this business begins to run on its own. After 12 years, it's time that this child gets up off the couch and starts walking around on its own. And, and I'm really excited about that prospect because that opens up so many more opportunities for me. My wife and I are starting a nonprofit, and so it's going to be focused on marginalized people, puppies, and the arts. So people, puppies, and the arts. I mean, nobody can argue about that. And so we're really going to focus on those people that don't have access to a voice, which I think is becoming increasingly important in today's world. A democracy is only as good as the people who speak the loudest for those who cannot speak at all. And that includes, American citizens that are now in El Salvador. That includes American citizens that are being chased around. And I would encourage everybody who's listening to this that it is now time. If you ever wanted to fight for democracy, yes, you can vote this coming Tuesday in the school board election, in the local election.
Yes, at the time of this recording, we're pre-election.
Yes.
So by the time you all hear this, we'll know how it turned out. But you're right, James. You got to a minimum vote. But
at the minimum.
Speak up.
Everyone has to speak up. And, part of speaking up, too, is deciding where your dollars are going to go. I know everyone's dollars getting pushed to the max. I understand that. But even if you go into your favorite local restaurant, go see Brandon Moore at Retro Metro. Go get a flash fried spinach and a water and sit at the bar and say hi. Because restaurant owners all across this community are struggling to an extent that most of them will not admit to you because it's a sign of weakness. Well, honesty is a sign of strength, and so that's what we focus on here. And and like I said, we're never going to stop being who we are and saying what we say and standing up for what we stand up for.
Good for you. I love that you are a safe place and people feel good coming here, because it breaks my heart for some of my friends to admit to me that they're afraid, and that's awful. It's just awful. That's not how you treat people. Are you in the kitchen every night?
Yeah, I think we deviated a lot.
That's okay. That's okay.
I sometimes go off on tangents. I'm not. I have a great staff back there, and so, I am here every night. Unless, there's a charity event or something like that. But as far as being able to cook every night, those guys do a great job back there. And really my role is just as a supervisor. Does that marsala sauce look correct? Is that the right amount of vegetables on there? So on and so forth. That it's just quality control. And that's really kind of, I feel grateful for that, because I remember cooking every day and trying to run a business and be a property manager. We have short-term rentals, we have long-term rentals, we have all these things going on. And I love that time of my life. But at some point you have to move on to other things. And we all know that, in our 30s are different from our 20s, our 40s are different from our 30s. And, physically, whether it's physical or mental or whatever. And so you just have to learn to adjust and adapt and change. And that's what we're doing here. That's why we're promoting internally. We're going to pay these guys as much as we possibly can. And again, I can't say it enough. Go in and go see Brandon Moore. Go in and go see Pat Duran. Go in and go to your favorite restaurants and go say hello. That's all you have to do. Go to Nearly Famous. Go and get a freaking dessert and sit at the bar and have a water. It's fine. You don't have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars. You can just go out and say hello to your favorite restaurant. Pay with a cash or check, please, for the love, and leave the credit cards at home for when you go to Walmart or Chili's or Applebee's. Use your credit cards then. Just go and say hello to your favorite restaurant owner, your favorite restaurant staff, and just keep doing it, because that's what is going to sustain us for the next 12 to 24 months. So.
Yeah. Makes sense completely. Was when you were learning to cook, what was the hardest thing that you had to learn to assemble, to put together? Was there any one thing that just really took a lot of practice?
Yeah. The biggest thing was learning the science of cooking, because people don't understand, McDonald's has several hundred people and probably some underground pharmaceutical company that is figuring out the absolute correct portion of salt, sugar, and fat that we have evolved to crave. And that's why people crave McDonald's. Well, the science of cooking is the hardest part of cooking because anybody can reduce down a cream sauce. But did you add the right amount of salt? Did you add butter at the right time? So when you're making the Alfredo, when if you're making a puttanesca, are you deglazing with the right amount of white wine? And cooking off that onion, garlic, crushed red pepper, or basil and oregano, are you cooking them off to the right amounts? And so the science was the hardest part. Like the go, I can do. But the slow down and understand the science of it was the hardest part for me. But once I mastered that, it's just so easy. Cooking is just so easy.
For over 30 years, Arctic Food Equipment has proudly served the backbone of America's restaurant industry, right here in the heart of Springfield, Missouri. We're not just a supply house, we're your partner. From kitchens large to small, we build value-based relationships, always exceeding expectations with quality products and expert support. Trusted, reliable, American-made values. That's Arctic Food Equipment. Together, we help build the taste of our nation. Stop by or call today. Arctic Food Equipment. We're working hard so your kitchen can too. The tools you trust, the partner you deserve.
Well, you make a really good point because not long ago I was making a soup and there was cheese in the soup and I put the cheese in too soon and it's got the little, and it was weird, grainy. And I was like, I told my friends that ate with me, I said, I apologize. I mean, it tasted good, but I said, I apologize. I said, I learned a lesson, though. You don't put it in that soon. And think about that, people in the audience. If you're cooking that soup or that dish or that pasta sauce for 100 people, a couple hundred people, you don't want to serve them that. Right. It's one thing if you have it at home, but it's a whole other thing if your customers are coming in going, what the heck is going on with the sauce,
Absolutely. And, I called it. It's grainy. Yeah. Because of the science of cooking. It's like if you put Parmesan into an Alfredo too early. It's the same thing, or you're making a pesto sauce and you throw the pesto in too early. So when you make a pesto sauce, it's for us, it's onion, garlic, herbs, white wine to deglaze the pan, a little bit of crushed red pepper, lemon juice, of course, fresh squeezed lemon juice, and then your pesto goes in at the very end because otherwise the cheese in the pesto will do the same thing. It becomes grainy and sticks to the bottom of the pan. And that's the science of it. Once you figure it out, it's easy. It's like riding a bike, It seems impossible when you look at a bicycle when you're 3 years old, but when you're 4 years old and you've learned how to do it, you're like, I can do this forever. So that's kind of how I look at cooking,
When I look at your menu, I'm glad there's a description because unless you speak Italian, you'll be like, what is this? And you really know Italian food, and I am so intrigued, and I know you change your menu around every once in a while. What are your favorite? What are your fan favorites? What's your favorite?
Well, for us, very few restaurants now still braise their own meats, and so braising is a long, slow cooked process. My favorite meal here is our lamb shank. That's a slow cooked. I mean, you literally pick the bone up and the meat will stay on the plate. And now we're serving it with a savory fettuccine. So all the pastas here are made in-house now. And so the savory fettuccine is interesting because what we do is we take the mirepoix au jus, so mirepoix, celery, onion, and carrot. So we take that. That's what we're cooking the shanks in. Okay, so we cook those for 8 to 10 hours in that braising medium. We then take that liquid and we reduce it down till it's almost a gelatinous kind of combined, and then we use that to make pasta, and that's the base of your lamb shank. And so that's the meal. That's what you got to have. And now, springtime, we're doing Brussels sprouts with it, lemon pepper Brussels sprouts. So the combination of everything. And we do different sauces with it. But we do have 8 specials every day. Whether they're listed on the menu, 8 special. Yeah, so we have an appetizer, soup, salad, pasta, fish, steak, braise, and dessert of the day. And that keeps us nimble. It keeps us fluid, so to speak. I have worked at restaurants where the menu never changed, and I don't think that people don't want that anymore. And then again, if people come in here in the wintertime, they want a veal piccata instead of the veal marsala that I serve in the wintertime. Yeah, I can always do a veal piccata. You know, I mean, or you want this particular sauce? Well, absolutely, because we make everything to order. So, I mean, literally everything. So, you know.
So it's okay if someone comes in and says, I know it's not on the menu, but can you make me this? If you possibly can, you will.
Absolutely. I mean, here we are. We have regulars who come in and they just crave our chicken piccata. We don't have chicken piccata. We've never had chicken piccata. We do chicken piccata for them. And because being small enough, we can do that. You know, we're not a huge restaurant to where, no, we can't take special requests or whatever. And so we do that on the regular. You know, even if we don't have seafood ravioli, if somebody calls in and makes a reservation, asks, you know, a few days in advance, we'll make some seafood ravioli for them. And so, you know, just being able to be adaptable, nimble is very important for us.
So some things you might want to call ahead and say, hey, do you do this? Can you do it? You might need a little prep time. But seafood ravioli, if you make your own pasta, you got to assemble all that stuff. That would be really a tough order on a busy Friday night.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and we'll even just not make just plain dough. We're infusing a lot of our pastas now. So, for example, with the seafood ravioli, we're actually infusing the dough with lemon pepper and paprika, and so everything has flavor, everything has nuances to it, and I think coming out of COVID, and this is the process, and this is the change that this business has sought and needed, was we've got to be the best at what we can do. So even like our chicken parmesan, everybody has chicken parmesan, you know. But it's the nuance of, do you fry the chicken parmesan in oil, or do you do like Gilardi's? So you're pan searing it in clarified butter until brown, then you're topping it, and then you're baking it in the oven. And that's why the chicken parmesan is so crispy and delicious and not soggy and greasy. And then we then serve it on a bed of basil-infused fettuccine, because I want that basil. And, you know, and for us, we're taking all that basil that we process, because we harvested over 300 pounds of basil off the property last year. So we're still, even here in April, still using dehydrated basil that we harvested last year. And we're going to do the same thing again this year. And so we have really neat opportunities down here.
And you're talking about the garden that's out front is where you grew all that basil. I remember when you started that garden, that you will not miss it if you drive by it in the summertime.
That's true. You know, in the summertime, you have sunflowers out there. We've kind of changed things around a little bit. I'm letting the garden kind of rest a little as far as the tomatoes are growing. So we're focusing more right now on nitrogen adding to the soil. So we're going to be growing a lot of beans. We're growing a lot of onions, shallots, leeks, that kind of thing, kale and stuff like that, just to kind of let the soil have a little bit of a rest, because it's been working really hard for a decade. And so we're just really focusing on letting it rest, refertilizing it, and getting ready for next year. So we'll be purchasing more of our tomatoes off-site, but we hopefully will have some contacts with local farmers, and we'll just be able to do that. We are going to grow some of the tomatoes here, but you know, even tomatoes, we never buy sun-dried tomatoes, because what we do is we just take the tomatoes and we put them in the oven overnight, and there's our sun-dried tomatoes. Okay, so, and even to that extent, last October when the frost was about to hit, we went through and harvested every green tomato off the property. We then took those green tomatoes and we made a puree out of them. We froze them into ice cubes. And so our special last week was we were doing a smoked chicken thigh and ricotta stuffed ravioli with what we were doing. It was, I think, a smoked paprika infused dough, and then it was a green tomato and cumin cream sauce. And those green tomatoes were just those cubes. So utilizing everything we can and really trying to give everybody the best quality product is really what our focus is. But the farm is awesome. I mean, I encourage people just to come down and just kind of walk through it. I mean, you know, and again, walk through it, come in, have a salad and a glass of water, hang out at a bar, come see, you know, your favorite restaurant owner. You know, that's great. Let's come see your favorite servers, come see your favorite chef, whatever. Just those relationships, going back to the previous conversation, those relationships are going to be what sustains the business and our community over the next coming years. So you're not only the chief dishwasher, you're a farmer too, and you have your garden out front. There's another one, correct? Or there was. Okay. Yeah. So we have actually just focused on this single farm, and for those listening, my knees feel different at 48 than 36, right? So, you start to focus on, okay, what is it that I'm doing and how am I going to still accomplish the same mission and not work yourself to death. So, no, we just focus on this farm now, and then we partner and engage with local farmers. And, it's just the same way. Yeah, I could do my own accounting, but why? At some point, there's a cost basis there. There's a time basis there. And so, I like spending time with my wife and family and dogs and stuff. So, yeah. So we just focus on this one farm right now.
So the lamb shank, fantastic. The pastas are all great. Is there something that your clientele just can't get enough of? Is there any one or two things that's just the favorite?
Oh, that's going to be that chicken parmesan I was talking about. I mean, people come in and they just can't stop. They love that. And even and again, we go back to nuances of cooking, right? So with tortellinis, if you order a tortellini with prosciutto, mushroom, and peas, most Italian restaurants have a tortellini. But most of them don't do it correctly. Where they're just going to hit a pan with cream and they're going to reduce it down, then they're going to throw some prosciutto in there, and that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is the way Grandma made sausage gravy. Okay, so you take your prosciutto, a little bit of oil, you're rendering that prosciutto down in your pan, you're getting the saltiness out of it, you're getting the rich flavor. Halfway through, you throw your mushrooms in. Then your mushrooms are combining with that, almost that just frond is what we call it. And then when you hit it with cold cream, that pulls all of that flavor out of that pan. And so it's the nuances of cooking. So like tortellini, Gilardi pasta, chicken parmesan, those can never leave the menu. I mean, I would have a revolt if I took those off the menu. But those are probably our three biggest and best sellers, to be honest.
Sean Kraft over at Nona's was telling me that the chicken parmesan over there was one of the big ones. People just love that around here, Dessert-wise, last time I was in here, I had, no joke, the best creme brulee I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
You don't do that all the time.
No, we don't do creme brulee all the time. And with egg prices, I mean, because creme brulee is an egg yolk based dessert. So there we are with that, And so, you start looking at, okay, well, for me to make this creme brulee is going to cost this. I need to make 3 times the amount of money that I put into it, plus the labor, plus everything else. Now we're looking at but I mean, we will make anything to order. We do that all the time. With our wine dinners, last year was a lot of fun. We did a French dinner, and we did Vichy Soie. We did beef Wellington, which traditionally is an English dish, but the French made it much better because the prosciutto d'Uxelles and the way they actually did the Wellington. So anyway, we do all kinds of things. If you give me enough head lead, I'll make anything. It does not matter to me. Absolutely.
You heard it here, people. If there's something you want, James will deliver. I'm glad you mentioned these dinners that you're doing, these Italian dinners. Mm-hmm. How are those going? One of my dearest friends, Brenda, she comes to these all the time. I need to get on the bandwagon. How are those going for you?
They're going really well. And the point of these dinners is twofold. So one is providing a really great quality experience for people. Okay, so in that regard, it's not just like every wine dinner. We go and I create a PowerPoint. We talk about the history of the region. We talk about the culinary traditions of the region. Or wherever we're at, and that gives people an experience. And people are still willing to pay for experiences. We're getting less able and willing to pay for just food. We'll just make that at home. But an experience with friends or family is something you can't replicate, and you have to just go to it. So we're doing that, and then so that provides that. But the thing that I didn't realize when we were doing it is it really allows us to spread our wings to the extent that we're bringing in items and things and culinary preparation, cooking techniques, so on and so forth, that we never would have explored without these wine dinners. And so, for example, with each wine dinner, I spend a lot of time researching the area, the region. I research restaurants in the area. I research their menus. I research the chefs. So, for example, Last month, we went up to Bolzano, which is the northernmost part of Italy. And in fact, that's where Nicola's from. That's the Lake Como region. Very mountainous, Swiss. But the interesting thing there is their menus, on one side of the menu is all in German, and then the other side of the menu is all in Italian. Because it's such a cross-cultural, and when you talk about mixing cultures, food is one of the first things that happen. And so it's really, really interesting. We did one in Tuscany, or Piedmont, which was interesting because there was such a spice trade. So they were one of the first areas to start experimenting with cumin and start experimenting with these Eastern Silk Road spices, curry, that kind of thing. And so, some of those elements came in. So not only do we provide a really great, fun experience for people, but we as a staff and me as a chef are able to really break out of our comfort zone and say, let's start incorporating some elements of this and that into our food. So, this year I think we're probably going to focus mostly on Italy, but last year I was just going crazy. We did French, we did Cuban, I did a North African dinner, which was a lot of fun because I made a soup, a red lentil soup with Burberry spice, and it was so popular that I had to make it this winter because people were asking for it so much. So, like the French dinner, we did vichyssoise, it's a cold potato and leek soup. And the way I did it, it was almost like liquid ice cream. It was with a hint of nutmeg, and it was just, you just couldn't get enough of it. Finely strained out, it was silky smooth. It had that sheen on top. It was just perfect, and that made it onto our summer menu last year. So it's a lot of fun. I would encourage anybody to. Let's just say no to Starbucks for a while, and let's just go see James on one of these wine dinners and have a really good experience at date night. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
That sounds like a plan to me. And I think the best part is that you learned something. I mean, to think that you did all this research and you want to share with people the history of the region and why the dish is the way it is and the culture, and put together a PowerPoint too. I mean, wow, you're adding to your resume here: farmer, dishwasher, professor. So you do a lot of things around here. So talk about your customers. You've got loyal people that come in here all the time, I'm sure.
We do. I would say 90% of our customer base is repeat. I would say of that, half of them are coming in once a month. And so, of course, businesses are always looking to increase the percentage of new guests, and that's very important for growth. But at the end of the day, yes, we are more expensive. Yes, we are harder to get to. Yes, we are all these other things that could be detriments, but I think are actually assets for us. In that someone can come in here and celebrate an anniversary and really have a nice, quiet, intimate evening with their partner and really get to enjoy the finer things in life, which is eating at a fine dining restaurant, which, is so important to me. Our staff, front of the house is so good. You do not eat off dirty silverware at my restaurant. You do not have to ask for water at my restaurant. You don't, or you shouldn't, ideally, right? Not all the time, but at the end of the day, that's our goal. And again, like we talked about earlier, I will not deviate from the highest standards of food, service, and atmosphere. I'm just not going to do it. And so when we get those people in that come in for their date nights, it's always fun. I always pull up a chair and sit next to them. And I don't monopolize their time like some restaurant owners, but I want them to feel loved and welcomed and appreciated, most importantly, and express a gratefulness that I have that they're here and not somewhere else, basically.
So I took a few notes. You mentioned you worked Gallery Bistro, Bijan's, Agrario. I remember Agrario. Patton Alley Pub, Metropolitan Grill, Nona's, Nicola's. That's a lot of friendships and a lot of learning. Where do you eat when you're not eating here? Do you cook at home? I love to ask people this. I get the craziest fun answers. Some people just say, I don't cook. Other people say, oh, yeah, I cook a lot. Other people tell me, what do you do?
Honestly, I don't really cook. My wife does most of the home cooking, to be honest. I'll do some of the basic prep to get ready for it, whether it's, smoking off chicken thighs or whatever. And so, my wife has alpha-gal, which is terrible. You can't eat anything from a mammal, which is butter, cheese, beef, pork, deer, anything. So we have to be really careful with that. But no, I don't really eat out very often. But most of the time I'm working, to be honest. Yeah. If I do go out and eat, I'm going to go support local. I'm not going to Texas Roadhouse. I'm not going to Chili's. I'm not going to Cheddar's. I'm going to go to Harvest, or I'm going to go to Retro Metro, or I'm going to go to Metro, or I'm going to, or Nona's, or wherever. Casper's is a favorite of mine. Sean Craft's place over there. Yeah. So, but I think there's kind of an old adage, like if your job, and I talk about this a lot, if your job is to paint houses, but your dream is to be a world-class painter, the problem with it is after you work 8 to 10 hours a day painting houses, you're probably not going to go paint in your studio. You're probably going to have one of the worst painted houses on the street. And so, it's kind of the same thing. It's if you clean houses 8 to 10 hours a day, you're probably not going to go home and clean your house. It's kind of the same thing with chefs. I mean, we're around it all day long. Why are we going to go back to it? So,
what's your favorite food?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know. I hate when people ask me that because it depends on what mood I'm in at the time. You know what I mean? It's just totally does. But is there any kind of guilty pleasure that you just love that you like? I don't know. I mean, I've heard everything from good melty grilled cheese and tomato soup to, Anthony Bourdain, he was at National Restaurant Show one year, and he was telling us that he would get up late at night and run to, I believe it was KFC for their mac and cheese. Oh, God. He loved it. And he's like, I know, I go out in the dark of night to miss him. But what do you like?
Honestly, pizza is my favorite food.
Okay.
I freaking love pizza. I don't know why, and it's just one of those things. And so I do remember making pizza with my mom. Of course, we grew up poor, so we had to make our own dough and all that other stuff, and then government cheese or whatever. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's tying in memories with my mom, making food with her. I don't know, because she would always let me, pound up the dough, and we roast the dough and all that stuff. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But pizza far and away is my favorite food. I just love pizza.
Is your mom still around? Does she come in here?
No, she passed away in 2016. So she passed away then, and then my father's also gone as well. So, no, I think she'd be quite proud of where we've gone, what we've done down here. And again, going back to say what needs to be said and stand up for what needs to be stood up for. And I'm of that ilk. That's the way I am. Even during COVID, I still maintain CDC guidelines until CDC said, okay, we don't have these guidelines anymore. Okay. But, and that created a lot of consternation here at the business. And sometimes our stance, regarding marginalized people or whatever creates problems for the business. Maybe someone won't come here because of it. That's their right. It's still America. It's okay. It's not a big deal. I'm not gonna be mad at you. But at the end of the day, we're gonna do what's right and what we know is right. And so and like people say, be on the right side of history.
I never understood what the big deal was with wearing the little mask. It's a little bitty piece of fabric. Mm-hmm. You ever been to Hong Kong?
Right.
My husband and I went to Hong Kong. Oh, my gosh. I don't know how many, 20 years ago, maybe? Mm-hmm. Everybody has a mask on. Not everybody, but probably 1 in 10. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, are they trying to keep me safe because they don't feel well, or do they think I might give them something?
Right.
So anyway, not to get political, but
right.
When you go to the dentist, they have a mask on. When you go in the OR, they have a mask on. What's the big deal?
My dental hygienist has a mask on, just part of the job. I never understood that, and that's the problem, is that things that should not be political are political. Science is now political. Economic law, the law of supply and demand. We've been following Adam Smith for centuries, and here we are. We're just ignoring it, and we're politicizing it, and we're politicizing, basic human rights and basic human desires and basic human needs and things like that, while still declaring ourselves, a nation that in 1900 was taking in, give me your poor, your huddled masses. And now we're all of a sudden, well, if you have a doctorate or $1 million, well, that's not what we're about, and that's fine. I don't usually say these things. If anybody wants to ask my opinion, I'm happy to, like you are doing, and provide that. And, on top of everything else, here we are, and, beyond everything that's happening nationally or internationally, we as Ozarkians, as a community, have to stand up, and we have to fight for those who don't have a voice, and who are on a plane to El Salvador. We have to stand up for independent businesses. We have to stand up, and we do that through voting. We do that through our money, and we just, I think we're getting to the point where the cracks are starting to show, and understanding your privilege. Because I feel, and I've said this before, I worked for 10 years for my business loan to get an SBA loan. I got told no by 16 different banks, and I finally got a bank to say yes. But I sometimes think, if I was a person of color, or if I was a female person of color, or if I was a gay person of color, would I have had to go to the 18th bank and the 19th bank and the 20th bank? Being a white man with a college education, I didn't grow up with everything, but I've been given a lot more than what some people have to fight for. And I understand that. And I think if more people would understand that and look in the mirror and say, where are you at and why are you here? They wouldn't just say, oh, well, it's because of my bootstraps. It may have been because we had a little bit of privilege and a little bit of help along the way. Mm-hmm. So,
you are a restaurant business owner with a heart, and Courtney, your wife, as well, and we appreciate that. It's a restaurant with a heart, and I know you well enough to know that everybody gets their opinion, and that's fine, and you will serve anybody who comes walking in here wanting to have a good dinner.
Absolutely. It does not. It's like we even had sandwich boards during COVID. I said politics is like a Matchbox 20 shirt or something. I can't remember exactly what I said. It's like it was hilarious. Like everybody has to have one or something like that. I don't know. But please don't wear one in here or something. Please don't. And it's like. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter to me. And see, that's the thing is I actually have some very good friends that have different leanings than I do. But the difference is that we don't call each other imbeciles. We don't call each other stupid. We don't call each other educated. We don't uneducated. We can sit and have a legitimate conversation because that's the America that I remember. I remember an America where libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, anarchists, communists, Marxists, whatever, they can all sit down. We can all talk about the subject of the day. Mm-hmm. But we don't have to ad hominem attack each other, constantly, and make that the basis of our disagreement. If you put somebody on a, you know where I'm going to this. If you put somebody on a group chat, you probably better not call them what has been called to Jeffrey Goldberg, what has been called to him, because none of that matters. And what matters is that happened, and figuring out how not to have it happen again.
Let's all be civil. Let's just try to be civil. And there's no better way to do that than with a really nice dinner or lunch or whatever with some really nice people that you want to spend time with. And that's what I love about Gilardi's. Is there anything new coming up in the future? You thinking of adding something new or making any changes? Or
Yeah, actually, we are. So this year, I'm wanting to dedicate ourselves to the community. And so I'm working out ways that we can run month-long promotions with charities. And so if you come into the restaurant and say, I'm here to support Rescue One, or I'm here to support, AIDS Project the Ozarks, or I'm here to, then we will give, 10% or whatever percentage back to the restaurant or back to the organization. And that's easy to do with our new system. So, and again, it kind of goes back to the community needs to stand up even more so now than ever, because a lot of critical infrastructure programs are going to be decimated. Ozarks Food Harvest, they're about to lose 25% of their funding. AIDS Project the Ozarks probably will lose all of their funding. So here we are. And so I'm just trying to figure out ways that, again, we can provide an incredible quality experience, but every dollar can be spent changing our community, helping our community, building our community, strengthening our community. And, it's just, for me, restaurants are a way to get people motivated because restaurants are so emotional. And anybody who works with me or has worked with me knows that I'm a very passionate person, sometimes overly so, but that's just how I'm built. It's like I saw LeVar Burton, and
he was here at the Gilloys.
He was here at the Gilloys, and boy, if he's ever in town again, don't anybody miss this guy. But the question from Greg Burris was, why are you so focused on civil engagement and literacy and all this and that? He said, just like the woman in the Roger Rabbit movie, that's just how I'm drawn. I thought that was so cool. I was like, that is awesome, and you can't change how you're drawn. But the key for us is to give pencils to other people who don't have the ability to draw themselves, who don't have a voice to do that. And so, whether it's marginalized people, whether it's puppies, whether it's arts, whether it's AIDS Project, the Ozarks, whatever it may be, really focusing on those groups and those organizations to make our community a better place to live.
Wow. People like you make this city, this community better. We thank you for it. James Martin from Gilardi's, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today on Savor the Ozarks.
Well, I appreciate you, Joy. Thank you so much. We've known each other for a long time. This has been a pleasure. Anytime you need anything, let us know.
I'm going to need some dinner soon, so I'll see you real soon.
That sounds good. We'll be here for you. I might even make that creme brulee.
Okay, then I'm just going to sit right here. Thanks, James.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Joy.
Be sure to go to AroundTheOzarks.com to sign up for our daily newsletter where you can get every episode of Savor the Ozarks, plus all our other podcasts, events, and contests straight to your inbox. And what are your favorite dishes in the 417? Do you have any restaurants you'd like me to visit? Email me at joy@AroundTheOzarks.com.